Just like that. Look at that. We're live. So, welcome to another episode of the Talktagon. There's so many different fight cards this weekend. The last time I looked on Twitter, I think there were 73 total cards in the week. Obviously, you've got the MMA World Championships over in Bahrain International Fight Week, Brave CF 18 there. You've got UFC in Argentina, Bellator 209, no spoilers, even though I already looked up the results. I don't care now. And I've got NEF 36 on Saturday. So, if you're on Twitter right now, you're looking at the snow and some of the precipitation in New York and New England. That's what I'm going to be driving through tomorrow. So all those bad things that are going on. I see there's a basketball game in MSG. They're having some problems there. I think it's a college game too. Yeah, I'm going to be running into that tomorrow. So it's going to be slow and steady going. And I'll be down to Portland, no problem. Again, I mean, I might as well introduce myself. Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. Busy stuff today. We've had episodes on Dialogue. We've got the episode of the Talktagon. I had a new episode of Fight Night Picks. And let's get into the co-hosts. So, the other co-host, Kristen King, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Very well. Very well. We got a busy week and a lot to talk about. I mean, there's a lot of stories going on just besides. I can't believe, first of all, there's 73 cards.
Yeah,
I want to see a list of those 73 cards. That's insane.
It's weird because if you look at all those World MMA Championships, they all, like, there's so many of those. When I checked at the start of the week on Tapology, that was pretty much all I could see. And then there was kind of other cards peppered in, but there's also M1 Challenge 99. There's LFA, a whole lot of different cards. So a lot of stuff that I'm following. But like I said, and like you said, there's a whole lot of other news. Nick Diaz coming back. And when I read the news, I thought, Nate Diaz coming back. Ooh, neat. And then, no, Nick's coming back from a 4-year absence, taking on Jorge Masvidal. Kristen, what are your thoughts on that?
First thought was like immediate excitement. I think it's no secret that I'm a really big Diaz brothers fans because they're part of the reason why I got into MMA anyway. So especially Nick, he was one of the first fights that I've ever seen. So I was actually really excited. And then when I kind of like, all right, I got over the initial shock, saw the opponent, it was Jorge Masvidal. Okay, this is going to be a very, very tough fight for Nick, especially because he's been away for, I believe, 4 years now. And it's, you know, he's at that stage where I don't think there's any developments being done. It's just the same old Nick that you're going to get anyway. But he's not an easy out for anyone. His boxing is always crisp. I think that's always going to be the major factor in any of Nick Diaz's fights. But now you have Jorge Masvidal, who has been a little bit more active. His boxing is also one of the best in the division. So it should be a fun fight overall. I'm definitely excited for his return in this fight.
Ty, I mean, what do you think? I like what Kristen said. I mean, Masvidal has been active. It's weird for me to look right now and realize he's 34 years old. And then I think about that activity, and he hasn't fought since November of last year, coming off of 2 losses. What do you think about this matchup, Ty?
I'm excited about it just because it's the same way I view the Conor McGregor situation, in that whatever gets the Diaz brothers back in the octagon, I'm all for it, because I think they're so valuable to the sport, whether you like them, hate them, whatever. They're big draws. They have done their own thing. They've earned their place among the sport's elite, whether it's in the octagon or outside of the octagon in front of a microphone. So I think it's fantastic. I don't care who he's fighting. I'm going to be watching it. Now, Masvidal, he's so inconsistent. You never know what you're really going to get out of him. Sometimes he looks like a world beater, and other times, like you say, he's coming out 2 losses. This guy gets flattened. So matchup-wise, as Kristen said, we have no idea what we're going to get out of Nick Diaz either. 4 years? I mean, come on. And we all know, I mean, the Diaz brothers train. I'm sure, I know they stay in shape year round. They're these guys are clever too. They're not running on pavement, ripping the cartilage apart. They use things like they bike all the time. Like they're very intelligent when it comes to how they prepare for things like this. But man, 4 years. So it's a toss up in terms of the matchup as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's really tough. And another point that, Kristen, you kind of alluded to, I mean, Nick Diaz has great boxing, but at the same time, Jorge Masvidal's boxing is very good. Obviously, he trains with the top guys at ATT, so I'm really looking forward to the matchup. One other bit of news that I caught before I came on here, 51 minutes ago, breaking news, multiple sources tell me featherweight Mirsad Bektik's out of his fight against Ricardo Lamas. My gosh, Ricardo Lamas is fighting this week. Renato Moicano. This is a bad one. It's bad to lose this fight because it was a replacement for the main event there. And that's going to be tough. Ty, what does this do? Does it take the wind out of UFC 231 sales?
I don't know if anything could take the wind out of that. You know, I don't know. You're talking UFC 231. I don't know. See, the thing is with Bektic, a guy like that, he's a guy that only hardcore fight fans really know about. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of casual fight fans, or so-called mainstream fight fans, don't really know about it. But it's a devastating loss to any card when you're losing a fighter of that caliber, for sure.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of slipped out Lamas, because obviously that was Bektik's last fight, and he got the win there by split. I thought he won that fight quite decisively. And like I said, I mean, we've got that UFC Argentina card coming up this weekend. Obviously, not going to get too deep into some of those fights that are on the prelims. There's a lot of local fights. I get really excited when I see Yuta Sasaki fighting flyweight, taking on Pantoja, and Umberto Bandone as well. I mean, you've got New England's Devin Powell on there taking on a late notice replacement, Jesus Pinedo. But as far as the main card goes for this one, and this is a question that I ask every single time, so you know it's coming. I'll ask you first, Kristen. If you could give this main card a letter grade, what would you give it?
Great question. I don't know, like a B-, because it's one of those cards. I always say that, I always say that a fight card like this is not one to be missed, only because even though it seems like it doesn't have a lot of star quality on there, you never know, the next breakout star could be on this card and could do something newsworthy. So as far as the main card goes, I think it's a solid card. Obviously, you have Neil Magny, you have Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's finally returning after those injuries that he was having and stuff like that. So main event alone, I think it's a great matchup, especially in the welterweight division that has been looking so intriguing as of late. I mean, everybody at welterweight seems like they're going straight to the top anyway, and that these guys are going to be next in line for Tyron Woodley for whatever fight he does come back for. So I think that's a solid main card. I don't think it's one to be missed, to be honest.
Ty, this is how I figure this is going to go. So Kristen's got it here, and then I'm going to give it a grade here, and then you're going to give it a grade here. What would you give it for a letter grade?
God, I hate doing this because it's my third C in a row in terms of UFC cards. I give it a flat C, but last week I gave UFC Denver a C heading into the fight and left giving it a solid B. It surprised, maybe even a B+ in Denver, actually, I should say. But there are interesting fights. Lamas Elkins is an intriguing bout, I think. I'm really thrilled to see Ponzinibbio fight. I really am looking forward to that. I think it's a now or never type situation for him. And I know he's won, 5 or 6 in a row. But I think he could really mount a charge and do something if he can beat a guy like Magny, who's been in the rankings for quite a while. Also, the second preliminary card's got a decent flyweight bout. Now, what that really means, we don't know if the flyweights are what this bout could lead to. It's probably going to be their last fight, the Sasaki-Pantoja fight. So I think it's a solid card. And as you mentioned, Devin Powell's fighting on the early prelim card. So, yeah, I'll give it a C for now. But I'm expecting to be pleasantly surprised. It's just the skeptic in me, you know me.
I don't get to rub elbows with any stars there on Saturday night. I'm used to seeing Devin Powell at these NEF events, and he's not going to be there because, like we said in a conversation here recently, Powell owns Nostos MMA and Conditioning. He has 3 fighters on the NEF card coming up, so they're going to be without their head coach. They're going to have some of the other guys there, and Powell representing the gym. But yeah, if I had to give it a grade, I give it a C-. I think it makes a lot of sense to have Ponzinibbio was supposed to be the main event for Chile. That made sense. Close to Argentina. Obviously, he had to back out, and you have Usman stepping in. But man, why in the flying F is Guido Cananetti on this main card? Did anybody not watch Guido Cananetti's last fight? It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. It was worse than Lewis and Ngannou. I'm not joking. I might sound like I'm joking, but I'm not joking. It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen against Diego Rivas. So Marlon Vera, people might sleep on him. I mean, he's 5-4 in the UFC. It's kind of crazy that he's had 9 fights in the UFC, considering he's only 25 years old. I'm really looking forward to that one. If we go all the way to the start, so Cynthia Calvillo taking on Poliana Botelho, that's an interesting one. I mean, we haven't seen Cynthia Calvillo in a long time. Kristen, why haven't we seen her in a long time? Do you know?
Well, we haven't seen her because she was suspended, I believe, by USADA for was it marijuana, I want to say, or was it something else? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
the drug that's legal in Canada now.
Right. Oh, congratulations, guys. It definitely was a little bit of a weird thing, but she's finally coming back. I think this is the first time that we're going to see her since her loss to Carla Esparza, and which she thought that she won that fight. It was a very closely contested fight, so we haven't seen her because of that. And I know she's probably coming in here with like a huge chip on her shoulder because she's not happy about that suspension. She's not happy about the way that the last fight went. So this one should definitely be interesting, and especially at women's strawweight, where you definitely need those names and contenders. Cynthia Calvillo has proven to be one of those names, and no matter even if she lost to Carla Esparza, she lost to one of the best ones, the very first champion in that division. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to be ashamed of for that, but I definitely know that Cynthia's coming to prove that she has her name staked right there in that division, no matter what her last fight looked like.
Yeah, I mean, Cynthia Calvillo, she's an underdog right now, plus 125. That line might change over the next couple of days. Botelho at minus 155, obviously the Brazilian a little bit closer. Ty, I mean, we're not going to get too far into the suspension. Obviously, you saw the suspension right after, tested positive for marijuana metabolites. She lost her body armor sponsor. Again, when I'm down in the States, I'm not sponsored, but I got to get some more body armor because they don't have it here in Canada. It's the very best. But she lost that sponsorship, and a lot of things went kind of south for her. So what do you expect from Cynthia Calvillo in this fight here against Botelho?
Well, we can't discount what she's done. I mean, she's beat Amanda Cooper, Joanne Calderwood, Pearl Gonzalez too, or no? Sorry, I don't have a record in front of me.
Yep, Pearl Gonzalez.
She's coming off that loss to Esparza, who was a former champion. But that year layoff, right? That's the roll of the dice. She only has that one loss. She's won 3 out of 4, and I think we got to take that at face value. We got to look at Calvillo coming in. As Kristen said, she's one of those names in this division that could make an impact, could eventually, draw more eyes to that division. So I think we got to take it at face value. She's won 3 out of her 4 fights, and we should expect her to continue to perform that way. Now her opponent is only at 1 pro loss as well. I don't agree that she should be favored. I'm actually going with Calvillo in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you didn't watch her opponent's last fight over Siri Kondo, where she knocked her out in 33 seconds. But
no, I did. No, I saw it. I know she's. I got a feeling.
It makes a lot of sense. What you just said. I mean, the odds kind of don't tell that full story. And the win before that, I mean, it was a decision over Pearl Gonzalez, so they're both kind of at the same spot. Calvillo was riding a high up until that loss to Esparza, and then I think the suspension really took the wind out of her sails. And I mean, she's still training at ATT, so you have to kind of wonder how things are going to fare for her in this fight. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good one. Now, the next fight, what can I say? I mean, I'm scratching my head. Even in my show notes for this one, like I don't have much written down, and I have the words "give me a break." That's my first sentence. So give me a break. I don't understand this. I mean, Guido Cananetti, I'll give him one thing. You know what? He had an almost 3-year break from 2015 to early 2018 where he was diagnosed with and came back from testicular cancer. And you got to give him props there. That's obviously a tough thing to come back from. We see a lot of hockey players, it seems recently, come back from injuries like that. And we've seen some major baseball players as well. But Cananetti comes back, gets choked out, and that fight was awesome. If you look at that, the takedown by Kong was crazy. And then you look at that fight, Cananetti was on the main card against Diego Rivas, and it was the worst fight I've ever seen. And the reason why I gave Chile, I think I gave it like a C+. I'll give it a D. It's an E in my head. It's so bad. But Chito Vera, man, he does it for me. I mean, decision loss to John Lineker, decision loss to Douglas Silva, D'Andrade, who's looked great. Kristen, how do you see this fight playing out? And if you pick Cananetti, go for it.
No, I wasn't actually going to do it, despite your feelings on it. But yeah, I think Chito Vera has looked absolutely outstanding. I mean, like you said, he's only 25 with 9 fights in the UFC. Like, this guy is busy. I definitely see the fight going in his favor. Maybe the last fight for Cananetti, maybe there's a psychological role that it could have played because obviously, like you said, it wasn't the best fight. He didn't perform to the best of his abilities.
He's 38 years old.
Exactly. He's probably getting to that part of his career where, he's almost on his way out. But like we don't want to discriminate against age and anything like that. But for Marlon Vera, I don't see how this fight can go any other way. I mean, I think he definitely gets it done. I can't tell you which way, but if it's a knockout, sure, I get it too. But if it's a decision, sure. You never know how Canonetti's going to come into this fight too, because his last performance obviously says a lot about what he can do sometimes. But I think Marlon Vera gets it done.
Ty, I really like what Kristen said there. I was going to say it's probably past his bedtime once he gets to that point in the card, but that's not nice. That's beating a man when he's down. So that's a totally fair assessment. I think it should be a good fight between Vera and Canetti, and nothing like that Rivas fight. You know what? Maybe it was bright lights and it was a little too close to home, but this time it's bright lights and it's at home in Argentina, so it's going to be tough on him either way. Now, Ty, you and I talked about this next fight a little bit. We just talked about one of the fighters in it. Cesar Ferreira, in his last fight, he beat Carl Roberson. For some reason, it was a featured prelim before a pay-per-view, so they wanted to entice people to buy a pay-per-view with Carl Roberson and Cesar Ferreira, two big stars, two big names people are going to really recognize. And Cesar Ferreira went and called out Paulo Costa, said that Paulo Costa went to his home and basically broke his home. And that was one of the worst things I've ever seen or heard. And it wasn't really covered big time by the media, which I was surprised. But yeah, Cesar Ferreira shot his shot, and instead he got Ian Heinisch. What can fans expect, Ty, from Ian Heinisch if they don't know who he is?
Well, I think it's safe to assume that, when you got a guy like that with his background, and I don't want to get into it because I don't know the full details of his background. But as I understand it, he was in some foreign prison for drug trafficking.
Yep.
At some point. And so you learn things in a place like that, and you develop character whether you want to or not in a place like that. And so I think we're going to get someone who's got a lot of heart, someone who's obviously making his UFC debut. And when you couple those two things together, I think you have potential for fireworks. Now, personally, I haven't seen him fight a ton at all. I think I've only seen one, maybe two of his fights on YouTube. And so I'm not well versed. I'm not the guy to be asking, but I do think that he will bring that added element of aggression, that added element of the ability to adapt under extreme pressure. Now, whether he can apply it to his game plan remains to be seen.
He was in a Spanish prison on the Canary Islands for drug trafficking. And it's weird because he got caught for drugs in Denver. It was ecstasy. And he got bailed out, and then he fled the country and went to Europe on a backpacking trip. I'm ruining the article, but I might as well. And then he
wrote it, so who cares?
Yeah, he got into more drug trafficking and trafficked drugs from Colombia to Spain, and then he finally got caught, and then he went to prison. And then he got into this style of wrestling called Lucha Canaria, where you can't get your points down. And he got so good at it that they had to move him out of the prison that he was in. And then when he came back to the States, he went to Rikers Island. And then they didn't end up giving him jail time. Yeah, they didn't end up. I didn't even know where Rikers Island was until I was at LaGuardia there. Like, I knew where it was. But again, I think I might have told you this. I was at the airport, and I'm turning on the tarmac, and I looked, and I was like, is that Citi Field? So I took a picture. Why Citi Field by an airport? And then I started going up in the air, and I was like, oh, look, the end of the tarmac. I think that's a prison. That's a prison on an island. That's Rikers Island. And I Googled it.
They actually have barges. It's so overcrowded. They have barges at Rikers where they, like, remember those school portables from elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay, they put those on floating barges, and some prisoners live in those things on like the East River or the Hudson or whatever.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know where we went down this road, but whatever.
But yeah, so Ian Heinisch, or Heinisch rather, yeah, he's had a tough road. Get into MMA 2014, officially had one amateur fight, got into being a pro, 11-1. The one loss against Marcus Perez, who ended up coming to the UFC. That was an LFA. Heinisch ends up winning the LFA middleweight championship, gets a win on the Contender Series. He's finished 3 quickly, his last 3, and now he's taking on Cesar Ferreira. I mean, what do you expect in this one, Kristen?
Yeah, if Heinisch can put the amount of pressure on Ferreira that someone like Jorge Masvidal did when he knocked him out with that elbow in the clinch and the follow-up with ground and pound, I think it's a definitely tough night for Ferreira. But you never know, because Ferreira looked good in his last fight too. I mean, he seems to be correcting a lot of the mistakes that he did make at that weight. So this one, I'm expecting Heinisch at least to be able to come out, try and make a name for himself, and if he performs in any way that he has on Contender Series or in LFA, then I think you're looking at somebody that's really, really interesting at middleweight, despite his story and whatever he's coming back from. I haven't read the article yet that came out today, but I'm interested in reading more about Heinisch. But I know his performances do speak for themselves, and he could be a very, very hard fight for Fajeda.
I found out about him, I think it was when he went to challenge for the LFA title, because I used to do a thing when it was still a podcast, and I do a featured up and comer on a Monday. I used to do 2 podcasts a week, and it was just hell trying to book guests and have so much content. So anyway, I used to do a featured up and comer, and it usually was always an LFA fighter. And I remember Heinisch was on my radar. I think he actually might have been one of the featured up and comers that I had, but great to see where he's come. Now the next fight, I'll go back to you, Kristen. Khalil Roundtree, there's no D in his name. It's not Roundtree, it's Roundtree. And
Yes.
that was highlighted in his last fight, I found. A lot of people focused on that. But he's taken on a man whose namesake comes from a type of whiskey in Johnny Walker, who's 6'5" at 205. What do you expect in this fight? And I know I keep saying, what do you expect in this fight? But it's a tough one having Walker coming in from Dana White's Contender Series, Brazil, taking on a tough guy in Roundtree who put to bed the Gokhan Saki hype train.
Yeah, and I did read an article today about Khalil saying that a lot of people may have said that his shot against Saki was lucky, but by no means was it lucky. So I definitely think that he's coming in here against Johnny Walker to just showcase that, hey, I do have the striking ability that I possessed when I was on The Ultimate Fighter, and I can put out anybody that I'd like to. I think I saw during their stare down, it was a little bit heated today, I believe. Was that media day that they were having today?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did get a little bit heated at some point, and I think Johnny Walker's also coming in here to do the same thing. You know, he's not going to be just somebody for Khalil to just run over completely, because Johnny has looked good in his Contender Series fights as well. But I think for Khalil, it's just, listen, that wasn't a fluke. I may have lost the Ultimate Fighter finale, but I'm still one of those guys at light heavyweight that you need to have an eye out for, because Khalil has that, he has that striking, he has that power. The only thing that he would have to work on is a lot of his ground game, which was definitely Ultimate Fighter finale. But most people that Khalil fights does not want to take the fight to the ground. They typically want to stand and trade with him. And if that's how it's going to go, I would favor Khalil in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, Ty, follow my little logic chugga train here. So Khalil Roundtree beat Gokhan Saki beat Enrique de Silva, and Johnny Walker beat Enrique de Silva. Who wins this fight?
I'm going with Roundtree just because coming off a big win like that, you know, we've seen him bounce back from adversity when he lost the Ultimate Fighter finale. Then he was submitted by Tyson Pedro, and since then he's made his mark. Obviously, he had the no contest. I can't remember who that was against. But the Saki win, to me, you know, I don't think Saki should be just discounted as a one-hit wonder who was overhyped and then lost. I think he's a quality opponent, and Roundtree deserves all the credit in the world for beating him, and that's why I like him in this fight.
Yeah, I would hate to be Gokhan Saki going up any wrestler or grappler, and I think they kind of hand-fed him a couple of opponents, and they definitely expected him to beat Roundtree, and that did not happen. So great win for Roundtree. That's a pretty good notch to have in your belt, to beat one of kickboxing's best exports into MMA. Now, the co-main event, Darren Elkins and Ricardo Lamas. It's kind of funny because I went and had a look at the odds. I'm going to pull them back up here again. Darren Elkins, the underdog, and he was on a 6-fight win streak before he lost to Volkanovski. And in that fight, I actually had a hard time picking it. I wasn't big on the Darren Elkins hype train, but at the same time, he did look impressive while he was winning fights. And then that came to a bit of a halt. But Ricardo Lamas has lost 2 in a row. And I mean, you look at those losses. I mean, that Mirsad Bektic one, split decision loss, and I can say whatever I want, how I saw the fight for Mirsad Bektic. But you look at that Josh Emmett fight, knockout in the first round. That was a tough one. I mean, he got starched in that one. So, Kristen, it's so tough. Do you believe the odds in this one?
Not really. I'm actually having a hard time picking a winner in this fight as well, because, you know, I believe that Darren Elkins, this is the fight that he's coming off of a loss. Same with Ricardo Lamas. I think they're both in that position where they're almost outside of title contention, but they're just not right there. I believe Ricardo Lamas has challenged for a title before in his career. It didn't obviously go well. But now, you know, the up and coming guys are getting these opportunities, and we saw what happened in the Josh Emmett fight. So I'm a little bit worried about Ricardo Lamas, because somebody that can, the person that calls themselves the damage, inflicts a lot of damage on his opponents, no matter how tired. Yeah, that tattoo right there. No matter how tired this guy gets, or how beaten, or how out of the fight he looks, he just always comes back. And I think Darren Elkins is a tough fight for anybody, especially because he's so hard to put away. And Ricardo Lamas has a lot to kind of prove right now, you know, after that stunning knockout loss. It's not an easy fight by any means. So I don't even know if I can pick a winner, because it's just interesting to see what space that these two men are in, considering their last couple of fights.
It's so hard too, because Lamas, 36 years old, you kind of have to wonder, well, maybe what's next for him. I mean, he's still up there at the top of the featherweight division, but you don't really know. And it was definitely tough to watch that Josh Emmett loss. Now, Ty, do you have any sense of how this fight's going to go, or are you kind of in agreement it's a tough one?
It is a tough call, even though Elkins is coming off that loss. You know, he did recently beat Bermudez, and help me out, before Bermudez, who did he beat? I can't remember.
I can't get the image of his tattoo out of my head. I'm just trying to think.
Hang on a second.
He beat Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson.
He beat Beckett,
and the Michael Johnson win was in 2018. And so, you know, it is what it is. But I thought Lamas has been done for a while. I don't think Lamas is a top 10 contender at all anymore. I don't care what the rankings say. I don't think he is ever going to challenge for a title again. I think he's past his prime, and I think Elkins is going to win this fight.
When Darren Elkins knocked out Mirsad Bektic, a little piece of me died. I was very surprised that happened. I couldn't believe it. And you know, the win before that was Godofredo Pepe, who's obviously in Brave Combat Federation now. But yeah, really, really surprised me. So I'm expecting the damage to get it done in Argentina. And yeah, I mean, I've watched some of those. You see them Vice, and you see different things pop up. I see Complex too on my YouTube feed, and I saw one of them where they were ranking tattoos, and yes, they did talk about Darren Elkins a little bit, but we'll move on. Tattoos mean different things to different people, and you can't make fun of them. So Neil Magny, Santiago Ponzinibbio. We haven't seen Ponzinibbio in a hot minute. He's been out. You know, he had the injuries. He's obviously riding the 6-fight win streak. Among them, Court McGee, Zach Cummins, Nordine Taleb, Gunnar Nelson, and Mike Perry, Platinum Mike Perry, who's still in the news today, continues to talk and open his mouth. And who knows if he's going to be with Jackson Wink in his next fight. But he's taken on a tough guy in Neil Magny. Obviously, we see him with elevation. He was there in Denver last week, so you kind of have to wonder. But I'm sure he's, you know, acclimated to the Argentinian way of doing things, and you know where they are relative to sea level. It's probably not a big deal for him, but he's coming off a big win, late notice replacement in Thundercat Craig White. And I talked a big game on Craig White. I told everybody that he was going to be the next big thing from Cage Warriors, and he's lost his last two, including a loss to Diego Sanchez, which was just a damn shame. So Kristen, two tall, really tall guys at 170. Who's going to get it done on Saturday night in the main event?
Right now, I want to lean towards Neil Magny. I think he looked outstanding, and the layoff for Santiago is a little bit concerning for me, only because, you know, I think it was a hand injury that he had to pull out of his fight against Kamaru Usman when it was the headliner for UFC Chile, and it's been a year. We haven't seen him. I know his last win was over Mike Perry, but most people definitely remember the Gunnar Nelson knockout more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think people are thinking that, you know, maybe Santiago does essentially the same thing again. He tried to get it out of there in the first round, but Neil Magny's not that kind of fighter. Neil Magny is a very patient, technical fighter who picks his shots, and when they matter the most, he gets those opponents hurt. And it could definitely be something that Santiago is not prepared for, because he's been away for so long, and Neil Magny has remained active. So I'm picking Neil Magny at this time, but I don't know, it could change.
It's hard to believe Neil Magny's been in the UFC for 5 years. It's just nuts. And the one Neil Magny fight that just sticks out in my head, I've got a picture back there. of Hector Lombard. And that's the fight that I think of because Hector Lombard had him finished. I was surprised the referee didn't end the fight. And Neil Magny, to me, he's almost patient to a fault. He waited it out, withstood Lombard's offense in the second round when Lombard was gassed. That's when Neil Magny kind of took over. And I think Ponzinibbio's got more of a gas tank. But Ty, I'll hand it over to you. How do you see this fight?
Well, the thing is, as I've said, I mean, I've been looking forward to watching Ponzinibbio fight for a while. So, initially that's where I would lean. But then, you can't discount the fact that Magny, he's only lost to people like Dos Anjos, Lorenz Larkin, Damian Maia. And while he beat Craig White in his last outing, I mean, he beat Carlos Condit and Johnny Hendricks and Lombard and Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, but that's 2016 and 2017.
I was getting to that.
All right.
I'm just saying, and that's the thing. We don't know what those wins are worth anymore because I don't think anybody would disagree that Gastelum's a different fighter than he was at that point.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to do this octagon math, we run into problems when these guys are progressing so fast, right? But I don't know. As Kristen said, Magny is so calculated. He's done what he's done for a reason. And I tend to think with a guy like Ponzinibbio, he's likely, if he gets in trouble, to abandon his game plan against a seasoned guy, like seasoned octagon warrior that Magny really is. And Magny doesn't get enough credit, overall in his division at all. Yeah. So as much as I want to see Ponzinibbio fight, I am leaning toward Magny, and that's who I think is going to win this fight.
I'm going to disagree, but I'm not surprised that either of you said Neil Magny. I heard a lot of analysts today pick Magny, and it makes a lot of sense to me as well. Ponzinibbio's trending around a -300 favorite, and Magny's around a plus 245, 250. So if you're in the States...
Well, I'd take that any day.
Yeah, if you're in the States, go ahead, throw your money on Neil Magny. If you can single game bet, if you're up here in Canada, maybe parlay that, do something special. I'm not into it anymore. Damn shame. But I would be picking Neil Magny if I was. But, yeah, I mean, I'm here to tell you, I'm going to pick Ponzinibbio. I think he's going to be able to keep that win streak going. But I'm really looking forward to this card, and I'm kind of fortunate because usually when these NEF cards get done, I think there's 15 fights on there right now. I could go check. But typically they start and they're done by 10 to 10:30. So I can just scoot right out of there, get back to the hotel, and I can usually catch the majority of the main card. Now, the last hotel I was at did not have very reliable internet, so it was kind of pixelated, and I had to rely on Twitter. But we'll see what happens this week. I'm really looking forward to covering the fights. Kristen, what do you have going on this weekend? Where can we find you?
You can always find me at fansided.com/MMA or fansided.com/author/KKING. And then you can also find me on Twitter at Kristen King MMA. And I think I'm just going to have some post-fight stuff for you like I usually do. Had a lot last week with UFC Denver. So down the stars of the night, which I'm sure are going to be quite a bit, because this is one of those cards where you don't necessarily pay attention to. So I'm telling you who to look out for when they win. And obviously my Twitter reacts, so you can see how other fighters reacted to the main event. I never do co-main event. I don't know why, but I should more often. But main event Twitter reacts, that's what you're also getting.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be sure to check all that stuff out once I'm done with NEF 36. And, as the night rolls on, because you know what? I get to go back into your time zone. I'm going to be in Eastern time. Ooh, from Atlantic. So looking forward to that. Ty, where can we find you online? What do you have going on for the rest of the week?
You can find me at Above Full Time Twitter, Ty O'Keefe YouTube, Ty O'Keefe Facebook. My Instagram page is under construction. I still haven't, figured out exactly what I'm doing with that. But for some reason, I do have some followers, despite the fact that I haven't figured out how to post anything from my laptop. Oh, God, drag me into the century. Anyways, all right. And I had an article about Mike Perry that came out in the Fight Network yesterday. I got an article about why I believe the Cerrone McGregor matchup makes sense now. That will be out on your website, I believe, tomorrow. And we have talked about MMA in the afternoons every day at either 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on what the schedule is like. So check out our Twitter feeds for that. Also, just want to mention, and it's got to do this, if you're one of the people who's watching this after the fact and you've been out in those California wildfires or you're around any of that stuff, either donate, and if you can't donate, go thank one of these people who have been doing all this stuff. I've heard that they've got lots of supplies and stuff like that, which is fantastic. But one of the things they don't get is a lot of people just coming up and saying thank you. So anybody out there, please do that. You know, they're saving not just our lives, they're saving our country little bits at a time. We need to appreciate these people. So also, belated Happy Veterans Day. Thank someone for their service too.
Happy Veterans Day, happy Remembrance Day here in Canada. You know, there were celebrations all over the place. Obviously, they had other things in Europe as well. So big deal there. I won't even go in with my plug. That was a great way to end the show. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. And I'm really looking forward to UFC Argentina and all the other slew of cards that are coming up this weekend.